You probably know Michael Schumacher for being the most successful Formula One driver of all time. To this day, plenty of his records have never been broken, but his time in the sport was mixed. So what were some of the best moments in his career, and what were some of his most divisive moves on track? Stay tuned as we count down some of the best and most infamous moments of Schumacher's complicated career. First up, Schumacher's first taste of gold. As Max Verstappen said this year, the first world championship a driver wins will always be the most important. So how did Michael Schumacher win his first? Early in his career, Schumi was racing for Benetton. It was his third season with the team, but despite being one of the most talented drivers on the grid, he was still waiting for the right car to chase his first world title. In 1994, the stars aligned. Schumacher won 6 of the first 7 races, and it looked like no one would catch him. But halfway through the season, Williams driver Damon Hill led a late charge to go into the final round in Australia, just 1 point behind Schumacher. With everything on the line during the race, Schumacher was in the lead and had to do something to stop Hill from overtaking him. And he did. Going into the East Terrace corner, Schumacher bumped his wheels into a wall before stumbling back onto the track. That's where Hill made a fatal mistake, or Schumacher cheated. It depends on how you look at it. Hill took the opportunity to overtake Benetton, but around the next corner, Schumacher turned sharply, leading to a collision. Schumacher's car was out. All he could do was watch from the sidelines and pray. After looking like he could limp his Williams through the rest of the race, he was called into the pit to retire from broken suspension. Next, Schumacher tries the same move. 4 years after Schumacher's first controversial world championship, and he was back at it again. The stage was set in the same way. It was the final race of the season in Jerez, Spain, and this time Schumacher's rival, Jacques Villeneuve, was the only thing standing in his way of a third championship. Once again, he was leading by just a single point. The qualifying race built up the suspense to a boiling point. Villeneuve and Schumacher posted the exact same time to the thousandth of a second. With nothing to separate them, Villeneuve started on pole because his time was recorded first. When the lights went out, Schumacher got a head start on Villeneuve and continued to lead for the first 3/4 of the race. That meant that once again, it was all down to the on-track battle. Late in the race, on lap 48, Villeneuve pulled a move on Schumacher to take the lead. In an all too familiar situation, Schumacher responded with the same trick. He turned in on him, just as he did to Damon Hill 4 years earlier. But this time it wasn't as effective. Instead of taking Villeneuve out of the race, he took himself out. In a classic piece of commentary, Martin Brundle said, "You hit the wrong part of him, my friend." Villeneuve went on to place third in the Grand Prix, more than enough to secure the championship. And even worse for Schumacher, after the race, FIA eventually disqualified him for the entire season. When did Schumacher and Ferrari hit their stride? Ferrari is easily the most iconic Formula One team of all time. Their beginnings actually predate the current F1 championship, but not all those years have been covered in glory. Their longest dry spell was after 1979, when they had to wait 21 years for their next world championship. And of course, the man to do it was Michael Schumacher. During his first stint with Benetton, he won back-to-back titles before jumping ship to Ferrari. This was a big gamble, but then many of his former engineers at Benetton moved with him and created a dream team at Ferrari. That all came together in 2000. McLaren driver Mika Hakkinen was the man to beat, having won the previous 2 world championships. But Schumacher got off to a better start, collecting race wins before Hakkinen found his rhythm halfway through the season, profiting from 3 of Schumacher's retirements in a row. But it didn't last long. When Schumacher returned to form, he won the last 4 races in a row and secured Ferrari's long-awaited 10th Drivers' Championship in Japan. And he did it in spectacular fashion, too, going head-to-head with Hakkinen throughout the race until a masterful pit stop sealed the deal. This was arguably the most important season of Schumacher's career. It represented the culmination of years of hard work at Ferrari and the beginning of his 5 back-to-back championships. Up next, which one of Schumacher's seasons was the most dominant in history? And why was he labeled a cheat and asked to leave the sport in 2006? So don't go anywhere. The 2002 Austrian Grand Prix. Fans tune into Formula One for high speed and competitive racing. That's why the use of team orders are universally despised. And there was no race more blatant than the Austrian Grand Prix in 2002. Ferrari driver Rubens Barrichello had done all the hard work to put himself in the lead for his 4th Formula One victory. But his team had other ideas. His teammate, Michael Schumacher, was trailing in 2nd place and gave Barrichello the order to let Schumacher pass for the sake of the Drivers' Championship. Even Schumacher said that he didn't didn't agree with the decision, and on the podium, he let Barrichello stand on the top step while the crowd booed. That violated the FIA's podium rules, which gave them a whopping $1 million fine. But more than that, it led to team orders being banned for more than a decade before the FIA realized that through codes and signals, it would be pretty hard to enforce. Schumacher comfortably won the season with almost double the points of Barrichello and 11 race wins. But if it were up to Schumi, he'd have preferred to win every single race. Next, Schumacher's almost perfect season. The way Michael Schumacher won his final world championship was nothing short of breathtaking. By 2004, Ferrari and Schumacher were well and truly at the peak of their powers. The team was working like a well-oiled machine, and there was no rival even close to challenging them. But even with a championship-winning car, Schumacher's consistency was extraordinary. He was virtually flawless in 2004, winning 12 of the first 13 rounds, which was only interrupted by an unlucky collision and retirement while leading the Monaco Grand Prix. In the 14th round in Spa-Francorchamps, Schumacher settled for second place, but it was enough to seal the season for him with 4 races in hand. It cemented one of the most dominant years of Formula One in history and was one of Schumacher's best performances. It wasn't necessarily the most entertaining season, but it proved how Schumacher was able to squeeze every point out of a campaign. His record of 13 race wins in a season was only matched by Sebastian Vettel 8 years later and wasn't broken until Max Verstappen this year. But when you take into account the changing number of rounds, Schumacher's 72% win rate is still the best in modern Formula One history. If anyone can beat that record, it would be Max Verstappen, who has already been compared to Schumacher for his mechanical consistency and win-at-all-costs mentality. He already has one controversy under his belt from last year's championship. All he has to do is add a few more. Why was Schumi told to leave the sport in 2006? Michael Schumacher had already faced a mountain of criticism before joining Ferrari, but his pure dominance at the team seemed to silence many of his critics. That was until the 2006 Monaco Grand Prix. Ferrari had lost the championship the year before to McLaren's young superstar Fernando Alonso, and it was beginning to dawn on Schumi that the glory days might finally be over. But he still wasn't going down without a fight. Coming into the Monaco Grand Prix, Alonso was starting to pull away from his German rival with a 21-point lead. Maybe that's why Schumacher made a desperate attempt to block Alonso. During qualifying, he held provisional pole, but Alonso was behind, blitzing his time and certain to take first place. In the final bout of his lap, Schumacher made a very uncharacteristic and unbelievable move. He understeered and didn't make the turn around the Riscassi section, leaving the Ferrari blocking the road, which effectively killed Alonso's lap. Almost everyone immediately knew that this must have been a strategic play. Former world champion Keke Rosberg called Schumacher a cheap cheat and asked for him to leave the sport. Schumacher defended himself and promised that it was unintentional, but the FIA agreed that it was deliberate and sent him to the back of the grid. On Sunday, the best Schumacher could manage was 5th place. Come the end of the season, Alonso beat Schumi by just 13 points, so that mistake in Monaco could have actually made the difference. Which moment from Schumacher's career did you enjoy the most? And did his controversies affect his legacy? Let us know what you think in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more F1 content.